Hi, I'm Tyra G, your host of Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. Welcome again to our virtual global gathering of phenomenal listeners. Yes, you, fearsome and generous, humble and honest in pursuit of new possibilities and purpose. Every week we meet for an hour to experience, educate, encourage, and empower each other through our joy, our aha moments, and stories that have been left in our pockets for too long. Sometimes we share topics that tradition tells us there's some things you just don't talk about. But right here, we live beyond the wreckage, so each week we start right where we are. You're listening to Radio Fairfax, Virginia, on your TV, computer, or mobile device, and we are webcast worldwide on the internet, www.radiofairfax.org, every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Yes, I know, that's not the best time. It's date night. That's okay. Should you miss us, check out our podcast on YouTube. Just key in Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. And for those of you who feel like connecting offline, I've enjoyed chatting with you. All you have to do is email me at tyragarlington.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, Courtney Nero, for composing and performing our Frankly Speaking theme song, and for naming it, I'm Listening. Our theme this month is Thank You for Your Service, Then and Now. I am passionate about celebrating veterans and active duty military who continually help us sustain and maintain our quality of life, and often at the greatest of cost. This November and December, we're hearing stories through a diverse lens to include wars fought, age, gender, race, family impact, and especially resulting cultural and social legacies. Our stories have included Mary Jessie Herrera, a 100-pound, 20-year-old military policewoman who wore accessories as an M16 and an M9mm sidearm in Iraq after being wounded in an ambush while taking prisoners to Fallujah and 20 operations of putting her arm back together. Mary is happily raising 2 daughters and has her master's degree. George Bodie, an African-American officer in the Vietnam War who at 22 had to manage the social and cultural implications resulting from this being the first United States fully integrated war, which saw the highest proportion of blacks ever to serve in an American war. We heard some heart-to-heart informative stories from women who decided to serve in the Vietnam War as nurses, librarians, and social support personnel as well. All of that had some unusual consequences. We cried with stories from wives of prisoners of war and military widows. And since this marks 100 years since World War I, I've included personal World War I veteran stories, which had to be told through the voices of surviving relatives and friends. Today we continue time traveling, first backwards to World War II to meet some special heroes with stories that have often been left untold. Then we'll fast forward into the 21st century to meet a pilot and Commemorative Air Force Red Tail Squadron leader, Bill Shepard. The best part of today is discovering how these two stories are connected. And for many of you who are both intergenerational and international, you may find some things surprising. So to start our journey, I want to quote from an account published in the Franklin Roosevelt Library titled, Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen? In the 1940s, the United States military, like so much of the nation, was segregated. The so-called Jim Crow laws kept blacks from entering public places such as libraries, restaurants, and movie theaters. Although African Americans served in the armed forces, they were restricted in the types of jobs and positions they could hold. On April 3, 1939, President Roosevelt approved Public Law 18 that provided for an expansion of the Army Air Corps, One section of the law called for the creation of training programs to be located at black colleges, which would prepare blacks for service in a variety of areas in Air Corps support services. But on January 16, 1941, the War Department announced the creation of the 99th Pursuit Squadron. This was to be an all-black flying unit trained at Tuskegee Institute, founded in Tuskegee, Alabama by Booker T. Washington in 1881. Charles A. Anderson, a self-taught African-American pilot, had established a civilian pilot training program at the Institute in 1939. Well, since there were no black officers, 11 white officers were assigned to train and prepare a total of 429 enlisted men and 47 officers who would become the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military personnel in the flying school. From 1941 to 1946, over 2,000 African Americans completed training at the Tuskegee Institute. Nearly three-quarters of them qualified as pilots. The rest went on to become navigators or support personnel. Together, again, they were known as the Tuskegee Airmen. During the war, the 99th Pursuit Squadron, which was later renamed the 99th Fighter Squadron, flew in the skies over the Mediterranean and Europe. The missions were primarily as bomber escorts. The 99th Fighter Squadron had the distinguished record of never losing a bomber to enemy fighters. In addition to shooting down enemy attack aircraft, they also shot down the belief that African Americans were not suited to responsible military service. In 1948, President Truman ordered the desegregation of the United States military. Now, the icing on the cake is in the following account. Just picture this. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt was very interested in the work at the Tuskegee Institute, particularly in the aeronautical school. During a highly publicized visit to Tuskegee, she asked to take a flight with one of the Tuskegee pilots. Now, you know how the Secret Service looked upon that. However, Chief Civilian Flight Instructor Charles Alfred Anderson, known today as the father of black aviation, piloted Mrs. Roosevelt over the skies of Alabama for over an hour. Flying with Anderson demonstrated the depth of Eleanor Roosevelt's support for black pilots and the Institute's training program. Press coverage of her adventure in flight helped advocate for the competency of these pilots and boosted the Institute's visibility. Roosevelt was so impressed with the program, she managed to stay in touch with some of the airmen. I'd like to do something now that I hope you will enjoy, and that's to play a segment of an interview with several of the airmen at their reunion, so you'll hear them in their own voices.
This is NPR News.
That gives me shivers as well. I was blessed to be at that event in Orlando. History. Well, there are very few of them left. However, we have some current champions that are keepers of the flame, keepers of the history. And after a very short break, you will meet one of them. Stay close.
Do you like to hear interesting, refreshing new music from up-and-coming singer-songwriters? Do you like to hear new and rarely heard hits from your favorite classic rock artists who've been making music for years? Are you fed up with commercial FM radio that just won't give you any of that? Then tune in Sundays at 10 a.m. to Eclectic Hours, where you can hear all that and more. That's Eclectic Hours, Sundays, 10 to noon, here on Radio Fairfax.
Don't be a fool on the hill, sitting around looking through a glass onion and listening to the obla-di-obla-da of ordinary radio. Just let it be, and make Fridays a good day in the life. Take the long and winding road and come together to listen to the Magical History Tour. I'm Rusty Gibson, and I promise to act naturally. Join me on the Magical History Tour. A splendid time is guaranteed for all.
Rusty Gibson's Magical History Tour every Friday afternoon at 5.
And we are back. Welcome to the conversation. I don't know if I'll do this in the right order. Pilot and Commemorative Air Force Red Tail Squadron Leader Bill Shepard.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am feeling good because you're at the other end of this phone. I need for you to introduce yourself, as I ask all my guests to do, but do it in a way. We have a human library project going here. Give us an introduction that would make us want to read your book, your full book. And while you're doing that, could you unpack your title and what that means?
Well, I think a lot of people in today's world are multifaceted, wear many hats, but most people know me as one of the squadron leaders for the Red Tail Squadron, Colonel for the Commemorative Air Force, Bill Shepard. Being a squadron leader for the Commemorative Air Force, I also have blessed to be able to be the Vice President of Education for the Commemorative Air Force nationally as well. So it's pretty exciting times to be honored to be able to be and blessed to be able to tell the stories of the Tuskegee Airmen and many of the veterans that are from the greatest generation from World War II.
Absolutely. How did you walk into that space?
I think it's like a lot of people grasping opportunity as it presents itself. I've been very lucky to have opportunities present to me over my course of my career, and I think the differentiator is I want to embrace those opportunities for change and opportunities for greatness, and be able to bring them closer to me rather than finding ways not to do something. I've been finding ways to make things happen. Improvise, adapt, overcome, as my Marine Corps father would say, and being able to then enjoy the fruits of that exercise.
Now, I was obviously researching you, and I saw Kansas, Canada, Texas. Geography seemed to play a large role in your life, and perhaps you can help us understand that journey.
It was an exciting time for me growing up because I was able to have the best of both worlds. My home state is Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a true Jayhawker, and my family's still there in Lawrence, Kansas, and we've been there for a long period of time. And it's really blessed because being an African-American family at my time, in my age, was the 1960s. I was the product of the two largest families in that community, the Kimballs and the Shepards, as far as my namesake is my father. And once I was, the oldest grandson from that union, I was related to everyone in the area. So I have a very blessed and very rich family tree and history in the Lawrence, Kansas area. But in those days in the 1960s, when I came to fruition for my parents, there wasn't much jobs for young African American males back in those days. And before I was born, obviously, my dad got out of school and he joined the Marine Corps and was shipped off to Vietnam. And fast forward the clock, he did 2.5, 3 tours of Vietnam and spent a lot of time there. And I often immortalize my father, a cross between Lou Gossett Jr. and Officer and Gentleman, and also the great Santini as well, as far as a true Marine through and through. But unfortunately, my mother found her way to Canada during that period of time because she was once again a military wife and was alone at that time. So she decided to go to Canada, where she had met my stepfather, who was in contrast to my father, the whole other different side of the spectrum. So I have two great fathers, my birth father and my stepfather, and my father was service to his country in Marine Corps for 20 years as an officer, and in Marine Corps Fighter Squadron, and then we retired. He came home to Lawrence, Kansas, and became in the Sheriff's Department for 20 years in our hometown. So great role model for service to your community and your country. And my stepfather was a business executive, and so great once again background for corporate lifestyle and servicing the commercial side of the world. So I've had great opportunity to live in both countries. I went to school in both countries. Have some great parents, and so I probably have a good leg up compared to a lot of folks.
And I'm listening. I was listening to your history, and I don't think many of our international listeners may be in tune with what it was like in the 60s to gain employment that was not traditional for African Americans. And often we did have to leave places to go to other places to find a new place to achieve and grow. But I was interested, your father, Vietnam, did you have an opportunity when he came home or while he was away to share what that was like? More people I'm talking about from Vietnam, and I actually had a beau who was shot down 3 times in Vietnam. And the stories seem to be difficult to tell. So I guess what I'm asking, was your father able to share with you?
I've shared a great many stories with my father's experience in Vietnam, and actually we were just home for the recent Thanksgiving break, and we were sitting having a discussion about that once again, what it was like to be 18, 19 years old.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
actually joined the service when he was 17. He snuck in the
Oh,
service at 17. He went as an enlisted person overseas in country at that point in time, but he progressed through the ranks and became a warrant officer and so forth, and eventually became an officer, a lieutenant, then a captain before he retired. So he had an interesting journey, and we were talking about pilots in particular because I'm being a pilot and
mm-hmm.
what the military was like. And he said, back in those days, he said, I knew all the African American pilots in the Marine Corps, because you got to remember the Marine Corps had just recently desegregated.
Right.
It's really only a decade or so since the desegregation of the military. So the Marine Corps was really still in practice was still separate as far as people gathered in their own particular groups and what have you. So he came in that genre and was able to flourish in that respect. So it was interesting talking to him about his service to the Marine Corps and his service just after desegregation and what it was like to be a young person looking for a job from Midwestern Kansas,
Right.
Midwestern U.S. and things. And he had a very very successful career. I probably get most of my tenacity from him and his
Mm-hmm.
Marine Corps mantra as far as improvise, adapt, and overcome. And it's served me well in my life to be able to take advantage of situations that may not be perfect. It may not be exactly the way I would want them to be or people looking for the best scenario, but take what you got to improvise, adapt, and overcome and be able to squeeze the sweetness out of life. And I've been able to do that based on his guidance and his stewardship.
Take what you got.
Yeah,
Squeeze the sweetness out of life. What was the other thing?
just in contrast to before I leave it, my parents had separated when I was a young lad as far as 1970s, but my mother found her way to my stepfather, which is just an interesting little anecdote to the story that my stepfather is actually the reason we ended up in Canada
Mm-hmm.
because he was a conscientious objector.
Oh.
And he's Caucasian as well. So coming from African American family in Kansas, 1960s, going off to overseas to war. My mother found her way with my stepfather. He was it turned to be a mixed relationship. So all the different baggage that comes along with that. He was a conscientious objector, had to leave the country. So my mother took my sister and I in tow, and we came to Canada as flower children. So I had an interesting little. There's a whole other story there in expect, but that both fast forward the clock. Both my fathers have been excellent gentlemen and excellent teachers and mentors for my life, and they've since become best friends. They were polarized in those days in the 60s and 70s, but now as they get older and wiser, they realize that each other has a valid point of view, and it's very interesting to watch that dynamics over the last 40 years develop between my father and my stepfather, and my dad calls my stepfather's husband-in-law. That's how much they get along together. So I've been very blessed in that regard.
Yes, you have, because I married into and therefore had a blended family, and it is not always that easy. But we have to remember that life is a process. It is not an event, and time has a way of molding us in different ways based on the directions we choose. Conscientious objector. I remember I was in California, and there was a lot of that spirit. And of course, the Vietnam War, there was a lot of things. There was a war. There was a war of attitudes and values on stateside, just like there was a war in Vietnam. So I remember the anger. I remember that a lot. I remember crowds. I remember demonstrations. I remember vets coming home to people spitting in their faces. And I thought that was unconscionable. So, yeah, I hear you. And your dad, that's amazing. 17 years old, he stepped up. And how long was he in service?
He joined and ran for 20 years and retired with a full pension at 30 years old as a captain. And the only reason he retired actually is because his next deployment was to be promoted to major, and then off to Japan for 2 years. And that's when he made the decision that 2 more years away from his family and what he had lost and what have you. So he decided to step out of the Marine Corps at that point in time, but moved to our hometown in Lawrence, Kansas, and became part of the Sheriff's Department, and did another 20-year career in the Sheriff's Department. So he's always been service to your country and your community. So he's been a great guiding light for me as far as that tenacity and stewardship for your community and your country. And but he also reminds me, if I would have joined the Marine Corps, I would have been retired at 38, my 38th birthday, and my 58th birthday, he'll remind me again. So, but that's what fathers are
But
for,
you see,
right?
that's what I was just getting ready to say. That's what they do. It's in their DNA, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's your dad's name?
Bill Shepard. I'm junior. He's senior.
Okay, well, Bill Shepard Sr., thank you for your service, and thank you for your son, who your DNA obviously plopped right on top of him for service. So this is great. Okay, so now we know a bit about you. What does the Commemorative Air Force Red Tail Squadron do?
Just to rewind a little bit about the Commemorative Air Force, the Commemorative Air Force isn't just the Red Tail Squadron; it's actually a whole organization. So to give you the commercial for the Commemorative Air Force, it's a really exciting story because it was founded in 1957, and it's a good Southern Texas story because it was just a bunch of good old boys seeing aircraft. There were ex-military guys seeing aircraft that were being dismantled into the smelter, and some of our greatest treasures that helped win the war were being destroyed and not being memorialized. So a group of individuals down in Harlingen, Texas got together, pooled their money together, and bought the first couple of aircraft that the Commemorative Air Force owned and still own to this day. And were able to get a couple hundred guys and gals together, and help commemorate the sacrifices that men and women had made for World War II. And even though we focus around the aircraft of the Commemorative Air Force, it's really about they're just a tool to tell a story about the people. And that's where we've really buttered our bread here with the Commemorative Air Force. We focus on the greatest generation, the people in the 1940s and World War II, and their greatest contribution, and that really sets us apart. Well, fast forward that clock, going from a couple aircraft and a couple hundred members in southern Texas, we moved to Midland, Texas, where we then expanded the organization as our national headquarters, and then we started developing satellite locations across the country. So now, after 50, 60 years later, we're not only 200 members, we're 12,000 members plus strong across the country in 80 different outlets now, 80 in 26 different states. And we have 179 different flying aircraft. And what's different for us is we actually fly our airplanes. It's not a museum, because museums are for things of yesteryear. But we actually actively fly all our aircraft across the country with our 12,000 members in our 26 states, and we commemorate the men and women who flew these aircraft and tell their story on their behalf. And so that's the strength of the Commemorative Air Force, is the people and the stories. And the Red Tail Squadron is just one of those squadrons.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And probably more importantly, history has become more important to me as I move toward the end of my toilet paper roll. We have to have people to carry the torch, to remember, because without memories, we are no longer. And so I'm hearing you say that 200 people. And wait, this is what I wrote down a note. You said guys and gals.
Yeah. We started as a mixed bunch, and mainly back in the Commemorative Air Force when it was started back in 1957. It was mainly the guys at the time, as a male-dominated industry at that time,
right? And
mainly Caucasian males at that time had the intestinal fortitude and the resources and stuff to make this happen. Well, we're really proud to say that we've become a great multicultural organization. We've adopted the name Commemorative Air Force from our previous name, or initial name that we had with the Times. A good 15, 16 years before all the different, say, political correctness came to the forefront, the Commemorative Air Force led the charge on that, and recognized that if we're going to be a public mecca for what we do, we need to be public leaders as well. So we changed the name to the Commemorative Air Force. We have men and women flying our aircraft. We have some of the aircraft we have the only men and women in the world who fly these things, like our B-29 Super Fortress. So we have two ladies who fly that. Are the only two ladies in the world who actually
That's
fly
wonderful.
that. And then we have groups like myself, the Tuskegee Airmen. We focus on the Tuskegee Airmen and the Black Fighter part of the story. being African American, I feel really excited because there's two parts to that story. Is most people, if they've seen movies such as the Tuskegee Airmen or Red Tails, they know that the other great aircraft out there is called the NAT-6 or North American Trainer.
Yes, that's World War II, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, and that aircraft was really important because all pilots had to fly that aircraft before they flew anything else in the military.
Oh.
So the Tuskegee Airmen mastered that. And they often call that plane the pilot maker because if you could fly an NAT-6 or a Texan or whatever it was called at the time, you could fly anything else. So once you mastered the Texan, then you were able to progress to your fighter plane, whether it be a Corsair or a Mustang or whatever in that case there. So going back to my personal story, I'm one of 5 individuals of color in the continent who fly an NAT-6, and with the hours and skills that I have acquired for it, it put me into a specific category or alumni that able to do this. And I'm one of 3 African American in the country to fly a P-51 Mustang.
Now that's where I want you to put a comma. Don't you talk fast, but this is special. This is special, okay? And I want people, see, a lot of people, Bill, aren't as interested in flight as I am. So we're talking about these. We need to visualize for them. What's the Mustang look like? I appreciate you telling us about the T6 being a required experience before you can move on to anything else. But the fact that you're one of 3 people of color in the world certified for the P-51C Mustang, I want to know more about it. What's it look like? Why it's important?
Well, the plane looks like speed. It's a sleek aircraft with great lines in the aircraft. And one of the fun facts about the P-51 Mustang, it's the fastest production plane ever designed and built, 120 days from concept to flight. And that was done in an era before they had AutoCAD and all the special computers they use nowadays. It was done using a slide rule in your brain, and in your free hand as far as drawing and designing this aircraft. So it was able to not only come to fruition in 120 days, but endure over 70 years of service, and it's still going strong. So it's a wonderful tribute to American ingenuity and manufacturing abilities back from the 1940s and beyond. So this is an exciting plane. It has great maneuverability, and the big difference with this aircraft and why it was such a game changer in World War II is it was the first aircraft we could actually take the fight to the enemy. Most of the aircraft, Battle of Britain era, most people are familiar with, are all defensive aircraft and defending the Great Isle of Britain. And when the P-51 Mustang was commissioned by the British, actually, to replace the Spitfire and Hurricane, it was actually ordered from the British, and North America Aircraft fulfilled the order, and it was there to help become a fighter pursuit aircraft and go deeper into the theater. And the P-51 Mustang was able to do that. Now, it was a collaborative effort in the sense that the original P-51, the A model, had the old P-40 Curtiss engine in it, so it didn't have the legs that the current model has now. But once they married it with the Spitfire Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, that was what really made the difference, the P-51 and the speed, the sound, and the legs to get all the way to Germany and back. And what's exciting about that is that the Tuskegee Airmen, taking it back to the Tuskegee Airmen, are actually noted as flying the longest fighter pilot from Ramitelli, Italy to Berlin and back.
Right.
So when the Germans started seeing the P-51 showing up over Berlin, they knew the jig was up, and that was really a turning point for the war. So the P-51 has had a glorious service. Anyone who flies it yesteryear or today still has a sweet spot for them. So it's definitely an honor to not only fly the aircraft, but to tell the story of the men who've done that and be one of very few people in the world that can to actually walk in their shoes. So it's been exciting for me personally.
Well, I will tell you this, I feel proud of you right now. And I understood probably 85% of what you just said. But I think, now you help me with this, I think when I was reading about you, that you took it upon yourself to train the P-51C. Did I get that wrong?
Well, what happened, I think maybe it was you're speaking to as the training aircraft, I'll back up a little, as I said earlier, the training aircraft for the Mustang is the T6.
Oh, okay.
Texan.
All right.
Or in Canada, where I live, Canada is called the Harvard. All the same aircraft, but depending who's flying and where you are, you would call it something different. because I'm on a Harvard flight team in Canada, and I have extensively hours in the Harvard and very proficient at for decades.
Mm-hmm.
That was the P-51 was a natural transition for me.
Okay.
So the training was so forth you do for any type rating for any aircraft and familiarization. But the barrier, I guess, to take away for the young kids that I talk today through my role as the VP of Education for the Commemorative Air Force
Mm-hmm.
is to take down those barriers. And a lot of these barriers are access and financial barriers. Access to the airports when I was a kid didn't have all the barbed wire fences around
Right,
the
right.
control
Uh-huh.
gates, and that you could actually walk across a field, you could walk across the runway, you could watch planes for a local buddy or something, and then hop a ride, and you could do those kind of things. Well, today, the young kid who lives across the street from where I'm at today would come across the field, would have to get through the barbed wire fence, the razor
Mm-hmm.
wire, and through the control gate, and then made to feel welcome. And then, if they want to pursue flying, the financial barrier is $10,000 just to get a basic private pilot license in today's world. So most of my hurdles in flying, for the P-51 in particular, were financial hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
Sponsoring the aircraft, we use 120 gallons an hour in fuel on takeoff, 70 gallons an hour of fuel on cruising. So if you do 70 gallons an hour times $8 a gallon, you can see it's a very expensive plane to fly. Plus, you got to fix it and maintain it. So it is out of the reach for the average person to do that. So I had to do different things. Go back to my youthful days, and I had to, at 40-some years old, wash cars, do a bottle drive, do fundraising campaign. So once again, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Try instead of finding ways that I can't do something, how could I do something? And I think that's a differentiator that we pass on to kids. Is there's all kinds of reasons not to do something. It takes the difference of character to figure out how you can do something and come with a can-do attitude.
And I wish, well, I'm glad this will go on YouTube for perpetuity, because what you just said, I coach young women, and so often the biggest job is to erase can't from their vocabulary and from their perspective. But the other thing I appreciate about you, Bill, is you walk the talk. Just like you said, hurdles, access, financial, 10,000 K to get a basic license, and here you are in your 40s going back to do whatever it took to get to wherever you wanted to go. And that's what I respect and appreciate, and hope that our audience is smiling as I am. I do have some other terminology and titles I'd love for you to talk about, if you wouldn't mind. And you remind me, I want to spend time on what you do with young people. That's very important to me, okay?
Excellent.
Okay, so I read, I think this is when you were younger, the Royal Canadian 19th and 27th Air Cadet Squadron. Can you talk a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, both most in Canada and the U.S., they have all kinds of organizations which are, you can say, paramilitary or
Mm-hmm.
glorified Boy Scouts, what have you. And in the U.S., you have Boy Scouts and Eagle Scouts and so forth, but also you have Civil Air Patrol,
Right.
which is a military spin to that. Well, in Canada, it parallels a lot to that. And the Air Cadet program is a Canadian version of the Civil Air Patrol that's associated with the Royal Canadian Military.
Right.
So being from the U.S. and having the military in my background, in my blood, as it were, as a young person going to the school in Canada, I naturally joined the Canadian equivalency to the Civil Air Patrol.
Okay.
And I was in a Civil Air Patrol squadron, or Air Cadet squadron, rather, in Canada. And actually, that's where I got my love, continued my love or passion for flying, and helped get involved with aircraft and gliding and just being around aircraft and having that opportunity for access and being part of my world. So it was something that was not foreign to me.
I also remember a very interesting number. I think it was 15, and it was associated with you getting a pilot's license. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, actually, I started flying when I was a young age, and I had moved back to actually Texas with my father. My father's last duty station was NAS Dallas, Naval Air Station Dallas. We had moved from California, El Toro Air Station,
Mm-hmm.
for the folks who know the military bases. and we had gone to NAS Dallas. And I remember when I was a young person, I had already been flying a little bit through the Canadian Air Cadet program, but I was sitting with my buddy Jimmy Smith, and he was a transplant. We were both expats to Texas, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
and we're watching planes fly over our high school, the Arlington Municipal Airport, and we said, hey, let's go out there and sign up for the programs. We went out and looked, and next thing you know, I signed up for a Cessna pilot training program. And I worked at Piggly Wiggly bagging groceries back in those days for
I know Piggly
$2.15
Wiggly.
an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was making $2.15 an hour and had more money in my pocket then than I do now. And but every penny I had went to flying lessons, and I was able to achieve my pilot license in 3 months. I sold in 5 hours, and within 3 months I had my pilot license in the bag. And the problem is I was too young to hold it.
That's what I was
So
going
had
to ask you. Okay.
Yeah, so as a student pilot with all the accreditation, I had to wait till my 17th birthday to actually get it in the mail, and so I waited for that. But at that point in time, I actually had to finish school in Canada, and so just got my pilot license, just got it out of the mailbox, and I was shipped off to Canada to finish my last years of school, and then I achieved my Canadian pilot license then. So I carry two licenses, a Canadian and a U.S. Full Canadian pilot license, commercial licenses. And so that's kind of how it all kind of began into that. And my dad actually didn't want me to fly. Actually,
What?
He's concerned. Well, he's come from the military and from Vietnam, and he's had a lot of friends not make it.
Okay.
So he's coming from that fatherly perspective, and don't want your kids hurt. Want to protect them in bubble wrap. But he still backed me up through it, and I was able to continue on flying, and here I am today. And we look back, all the left and right turns in the roads of life you could take, and where they could lead you, and if you made a couple decisions here or there, it would have been a whole different life for me.
Well, it wasn't, and you are, and you have achieved. And I have heard you. I'm going to actually read a quote I pulled out that I like, and I want to use it as a segue for you to talk to me about your life as a role model, mentor, or what have you. In your own words, it says, with the support of my family, I've been able to aim high. I believe in myself. I use my brain to achieve my goals. I never quit and instead find a way. I am always ready to go and prepared, and truly in my heart, not just my brain, I expect to win. I love that, by the way.
Yeah, and that's really a good segue to the Commemorative Air Force Red Tail Squadron Tuskegee program, Rise Above program, we call it.
Mm-hmm.
And those principles were the principles we adopted from the Tuskegee Airmen. I have to give a nod and respect to them, but aim high, believe in yourself, use your brain, never quit, and expect to win.
Oh, okay. Those are their 6 principles?
The 6 principles, and I've adopted them into how I work my life and things. And I think a lot of us do those 6 principles in our own way, word it a little differently. But I think the root for anybody that I found successful is it really has their success rooted in a variation of those 6 principles right there, regardless of where you come from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been able to use that and leverage that for the successes in my life. And I tell young people through our Rise Above tour for the Commemorative Air Force that you may not be able to exude all 6 principles,
Mm-hmm.
but you can at least get 1 or 2 of them. So when you try an activity, we talk about expect to win. When you go and kick the ball, the proverbial ball, you got to kick it like you're going to win. You might not score, but you got to kick it like you're going to win.
Absolutely.
So instead of trying out there. And that segues into what we do here at the Commemorative Air Force, the Red Tail Squadron specifically,
Mm-hmm.
is we travel from coast to coast to coast, and our founder, Don Hines, is our unit founder, Don Hines, who actually perished in an aircraft accident many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to tell the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, so we reconditioned, restored a P-51 C model Mustang, and restored the red-tailed Mustang to commemorate the squadrons of the Commemorative Air Force, all the squadrons of the 332nd Air Group, the 4 squadrons,
Mm-hmm.
99th being one of them. And we had a paint scheme or livery that represents all 4 squadrons on the Commemorative Air Force aircraft. And you can see that on redtail.org. And you can see the
Yeah, I
aircraft.
went
You
there,
can see
actually,
you
and
can
I
see
have a picture of it right now.
Excellent. And what Don Hines' mission was to have the Red Tail story, the Tuskegee Airmen, in every school of America. So what we've done is we've taken that to heart, that mission, and we have a mobile movie exhibit that travels around the country with myself and the team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, for lack of better words, and ICAS is The movie system is kind of a panoramic movie screening system. It's in a transport truck trailer, a 53-foot transport truck trailer that has push-outs like a big mobile home. It holds 50 people inside, and it's a dynamic, interactive, exciting movie about the Tuskegee Airmen, about 30 minutes long. And we actually roll this to schools all across America every year, about 35, 40 schools every flight season. And we park it up in our front schoolyard, and we have at least we empty the school out. And we have all the kids come through, take turns, and come to the school and see and experience what it was the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. And they get their own dog tag to take home with them that has those 6 principles in there. So we do that Monday to Friday, and then on Friday afternoon, we're usually associated that communities with an air show. We move the mobile movie exhibit to the local airport, and then myself or one of my teammates will fly the P-51 Mustang in there Thursday night, Friday morning. And we have now you can come out of the trailer, the unit, the movie exhibit, and actually see the aircraft that's in the movie, and actually experience, touch and feel a real P-51 Mustang. And we usually do an air show associated with the event, and then we move on to the next place on Sunday.
Now, here's what I wanted to ask you. Somebody, I think it was Devon, was telling me you were about to go do an air show. Okay. How does a school engage you? How do we make, if I wanted to make that happen in Fairfax, Virginia, at one of these schools, or in Maryland, how would that happen?
Yeah, you would go to our website, redtail.org, and you would talk to our logistics coordinator, and you would book the event, and we would then coordinate and work the details out about coming to your school, and either just with the movie exhibit or with the trailer, and also the Commemorative Air Force. We even have something more portable, a dome theater, which is like a portable planetarium, and we show the movie in. And the essence is this movie is only shown in a couple of venues, the movie exhibit trailer or the dome theater, because it's an experiential movie. It's all immersive. So this movie, the real secret sauce of this we show is it's not on a flat screen, it's not on a whiteboard, it's not on a projector system. It's on an immersive surround enveloping system, so you experience the movie rather than just simply watching it passively. So that's really the secret sauce of the Red Tail program, and then also having the aircraft show up at the venue as well, if it has a runway, obviously there an airport or a community associated with an airport, and then so it's kind of a 1-2 punch, and we travel all across the country and we do this, and it's been exciting for the last 8 years I've been involved with the Red Tail Squadron, and once again going to 35, 40,000 kids and adults every year. We have a definite footprint, and we've left across the country, and we're going strong.
Thank you for that. First of all, that's awesome. That's what I'm thinking. But the obvious question for me is, how do you support that program?
Well, we have great people endowing supporting the organization. We have, like any other nonprofit organization, we have fees for showing up. A lot of times we come to a school. Usually, local community business partner will help sponsor our fees to get to the school to help us with the branding and so forth to be for that location. Usually, if there's an air show associated with the community, they offer support as well. But then also we have a great fundraising program. We have a mailing program that we have connection and relationship with people who are supporters from coast to coast to coast, who definitely send in the funds to keep us rolling down the road and tell this great story.
So what I'm wanting to repeat at this point, Bill travels with an experiential exhibit in a trailer or dome theater experience, and you may find out more about that by going to redtail.org and connecting with some of his logistics personnel. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Christy would love to talk to you.
Also, I wanted to know, what's the most frequently asked question once the children have experienced the trailer?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of times the kids are in disbelief because they just have not had that opportunity before to actually touch or feel or see an aircraft or get in the aircraft. One of the expressions we use here at the Commemorative Air Force is "drop the rope." We actually don't. We're not a museum where you have to stand back and look at things that are static. We actually are a dynamic organization where we actually get people in the aircraft. You can fly in the aircraft. One of our mantras is everybody flies. So if you want to fly in a P-51, you want to fly in a bomber, you want to fly in a transport plane, we have the skills and ability and access to people to do that. We're one of the few people in the world that can do that in such a scale that the Commemorative Air Force has. We have simulation opportunities as well. So we have a really good immersive opportunity where people can get engaged and involved. Because we have 12,000 members, we have all kinds of people who want to involve. Fun fact for you that it's a 14-to-1 ratio for flying. So for every one pilot, there's 14 support crew. So we really express to the kids, you don't have to be the pilot to be the important part of the equation. There's all kinds of jobs in aerospace and aviation that you can be part of, whether it be the maintainer or the ground crew or the aircraft control system. So we let people experience what it was like to rise above your situation, find yourself and experience aviation from that aspect.
I am so excited because I'm really interested in promoting the whole STEM or science, technology, engineering, and math fields for our young people. One of my favorite interviews was with an astrophysicist who works at NASA, and she can make space exciting in unbelievable ways. And what she was sharing, she started out dreaming as a toddler, looking up at the sky, and you just said, drop the rope. Everybody can fly. I want us to be able to expand the imaginations of our young people and help them to get rid of the word can't. And as I'm looking at the clock, guess what I need you to do, Bill?
Yes, ma'am.
I need you to, I asked Bill, as I do always, to write a letter to his younger self to read to us. Usually those letters reveal things to the writer as well as to the listener. Would you mind doing that now?
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. So just bear with me here.
I'll bear with you.
So my letter is to Dear Young Billy. Get ready for a great ride of your life. I hope this finds you well, but I could probably answer that question for you. I've come to know you as a rising star, a shining star, so I know looking at you that it'd be hard to imagine you having a mediocre day. In saying that, I reflect on my own life, and I'm compelled to tell you, young Bill, breathe. Life is about to come at you in big gulps of air, in a way the way you take things on. I know your mouth will be wide open to take it all in. So what I want to tell you is take the time to enjoy the sweetness of the air. Take it all in, but breathe deeply and let it fill your lungs to greatness, capacity, and abundance that you'll never realize with small, shallow breaths. Smell those proverbial roses that they talk about so much, and you deserve to be there. Often the path you'll take will take you to places that you'll be the one and the only person to hold a certain accreditation, the one and the only person to complete a task, the only person to do things first. But let this be your strength and the charge for excellence, not the excuse to blame society for our hardships that we humans endure. Don't be a victim, but rather a builder of greatness. Bill, you will be asked to give many things and many times. So fill your pockets with love, kindness, and respect respect the path that others follow, and it will be different from yours. With this, you'll never be empty, and when you reach in to give, you truly give something that is truly yours to give. The one and the only selfless gift is hope. So carry yourself well, make room for others, embrace your passions, live well. You're truly Bill Shepard Sr.
I'm impressed. Things that you impressed me by, the concept of breathe. Take time to enjoy. Let being the first be your strength. Love, kindness, respect, wear them as your accessories. Thank you so much, Bill. I want to remind our listeners you're listening to Bill Shepard, and we've been flying with him now for at least 40 minutes. And I want to leave you with our spiritual doggy bag. I usually do this for the moments during the next week where you may just say, I am tired of being tired, or am I enough? Maybe you think you don't deserve to be different or the more that you want. Stop right there. Check your label. You're worthy. You are enough. You are amazing just as you are. You're smarter than you think, stronger than you know, more beautiful than you believe, and more loved than you can ever imagine. You have everything inside of you need to be who you were created to be. Your calling in life is to fully express who you already are. The world will never see another human being like you. There's no one on the face of the planet that has what you have. Your uniqueness in every respect is your gift. Life asks one thing of you, to be the full expression of yourself, so that you can leave your unique imprint on all of those you encounter. Bill Shepard, you've left a unique imprint on me, and I'm sure on my listeners. I am so grateful that you gave me your time, your experience, and your spirit. Your seat at the table is guaranteed, and I look forward to hearing from you next week, same time. This is Tyra G. Take care.